My husband mocked my career, until I outsmarted him in divorce court turned into the biggest victory of my life. He laughed at my dreams, but in the end I shattered his pride with a courtroom move he never expected. When the judge finally called our names, I felt a strange calm wash over me. My husband Michael walked into the courtroom with that smug grin he always wore, the one that said he believed he had already won. He thought this was going to be quick, easy, humiliating, for me. What he didn't know was that I had spent months preparing for this exact moment. I wasn't the same woman he used to laugh at across our marble kitchen island, dismissing my work as cute little projects. I wasn't the naive girl he married who thought love was enough to keep us equal. By now, I had turned every insult, every dismissal, into fuel. And today, in this cold courtroom, it was finally my turn to let him taste the bitterness he had served me for years. Michael and I had met when I was still finishing my degree. He was already a rising attorney from a family that practically breathed law. He carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never truly been told no. When he first asked me out, I felt flattered, almost chosen. At the beginning, his arrogance came across as charm. He told me my accounting classes were a good hobby, and that one day I'd thank him for showing me a bigger life. I laughed it off back then. I thought he was joking. But over time, his jokes hardened into beliefs. To him, my career was nothing more than play acting until I became the perfect wife standing in his shadow. I tried to prove him wrong, long nights at the office, certifications, steady promotions. Each small win made me proud, but to him, it was invisible. He liked to remind me at dinner parties, Sarah handles numbers. I handle the real world. Guests laughed. I swallowed the humiliation like a bitter pill. The breaking point wasn't sudden, it was years of erosion. I remember one night, exhausted after finishing a consulting project that had saved a client's company from collapse, I came home glowing with pride. Michael barely looked up from his whiskey. "Congratulations," he muttered. "Maybe next time you'll actually bring in enough to cover your shoe habit." I didn't even own expensive shoes. But that was Michael, cutting me down in ways that seemed harmless to outsiders but ate away at me inside. When I discovered he was cheating, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I felt clarity. He had underestimated me for so long that he assumed I'd crumble. What he didn't realize was that while he was busy mocking me, I had quietly built something powerful. I had founded my own financial consulting firm under his nose. Silent, deliberate, legal. Every client, every dollar, every success documented. It was my secret, and soon it would be my weapon. The first time I told him I wanted to start my own firm, he actually laughed out loud. "Sarah, you can't be serious. Do you know how many businesses fail in their first year? You're better off leaving that stuff to people who actually understand risk." That night I cried quietly in the bathroom while he slept soundly in our bed, certain his words had crushed me. But instead of giving up, I opened my laptop, drafted a business plan, and started small. I took consulting calls during lunch breaks, managed spreadsheets late into the night, and reinvested every cent I earned. He thought my tired eyes came from keeping up appearances for him. In reality, I was building an empire behind his back, an empire that would soon be undeniable. By the time Michael's affair came to light, my firm was already thriving. I had 5 steady clients, a small team of analysts, and revenue numbers that made me prouder than any gift he ever bought me. But I never mentioned it at home. To Michael, I was still playing accountant while he carried the real weight. The day I found the messages from his coworker on his phone, I didn't even feel heartbreak, just resolve. If he wanted out, fine. But he wasn't going to walk away thinking I was the weak one. When he filed for divorce, he smirked as if he had already divided everything in his head. "You'll be fine," he told me, almost patronizing. "I'll make sure you get enough to live on. You can always pick up extra work if you really need it." I nodded and said nothing, while inside I was already planning exactly how I'd strip that smug confidence away. Court day felt like theater. Michael strutted in wearing his best suit, greeting colleagues in the hallway like he was the star of the show. I sat quietly, documents neatly stacked in my bag, waiting for my moment. When the judge asked for financial disclosures, Michael leaned back, smug, as if nothing in my name could possibly surprise anyone. He had painted me as the dependent spouse, the woman who dabbled in numbers while he carried the real weight of our marriage. Then the clerk read my statement aloud. The room shifted. My registered company. My annual earnings. My employees. My assets. Line after line revealed that I wasn't just self-sufficient, I was wealthier than Michael. I watched his face drain of color as the realization sank in. For the first time in years, he wasn't laughing. His lawyer shuffled through the papers in disbelief, whispering frantically. Michael's jaw tightened, but he tried to recover with that same arrogant smirk. "This is exaggerated," he scoffed. "She must be hiding something." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Shannon, the documents are verified. Your wife's firm reports an annual income that surpasses yours by nearly 40%. The silence that followed was delicious. I sat straight, hands folded, as Michael shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He had always loved playing the role of the provider, the one in control. But now, stripped of his illusion, he looked small. In that moment, I realized the divorce wasn't just an ending. It was the unveiling of who I had become without him, and who he never believed I could be. Michael tried to salvage his pride with that same lawyerly arrogance he had honed for years. He leaned forward, voice steady but eyes burning with disbelief. "Your Honor, with all due respect, my wife has always been financially dependent on me. This sudden revelation of wealth is clearly a tactic to..." The judge cut him off. "Mr. Shannon, the court is not interested in your personal perceptions. The documents are clear. Mrs. Shannon's company is legitimate, profitable, and independently established during the marriage." I almost pitied him in that moment. Almost. But pity was a luxury he had never afforded me. His family sat 2 rows behind him, polished, judgmental, always ready to remind me that I had been the small-town girl they never thought belonged at their table. His mother's lips parted slightly when she heard the numbers. For once, Margaret Shannon had nothing clever to say. She just stared at me, her eyes cold but wide with shock. Michael's attorney cleared his throat. "Then surely, Your Honor, this changes the request for spousal support. If Mrs. Shannon's business is as profitable as presented, she has no need for financial aid from my client." The judge nodded. "Correct. In fact, given the disparity now revealed, Mr. Shannon, you may wish to reconsider your own claims." That was when I saw it, the exact second Michael realized the ground beneath him had shifted completely. He had walked in certain I would leave this marriage with scraps, dependent on whatever charity he decided to offer. Instead, the court was now considering whether he had any standing to request support. The silence stretched. He swallowed hard, his face betraying cracks he couldn't plaster over with charm. For years, he had called my work a hobby. For years, he introduced me at dinners as Sarah, who plays with spreadsheets. For years, he had erased my efforts, mocked my ambitions, and controlled the narrative of who I was. And in one hearing, that narrative had shattered. The judge excused us for a recess. I gathered my papers slowly, deliberately, not rushing the moment. Michael avoided my eyes, though I could feel the heat of his anger radiating across the room. As we stepped into the hallway, he finally hissed through clenched teeth. "You planned this." I turned to him, calm, steady. "No, Michael. You planned to humiliate me. You planned to walk away thinking I was nothing without you. What I did was survive. And while you were too busy laughing at me, I built something you'll never touch." For once, he had no comeback. He just stared, his face twisted between rage and disbelief, as though the woman standing in front of him was a stranger. Maybe, in a way, I was. Because the version of me who tolerated his condescension, who swallowed every insult, who believed she had to earn his approval, that woman was gone. What remained was someone he could never control again. When we re-entered the courtroom, Michael sat rigid, refusing to look at me. I felt the weight of years lifting off my shoulders with every tick of the clock. The judge finalized the property division, the custody of nothing but silence between us. And then, just like that, it was over. When the gavel struck, finalizing the divorce, the sound echoed like thunder in my chest. Not because I was sad, but because I was free. For the first time in 6 years, I wasn't someone's afterthought, someone's little wife with her little job. Michael stayed seated, stunned. His lawyer was already packing up, trying to mask his frustration with efficiency. I stood slowly, my heels clicking against the tile floor like a victory drumbeat. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered. Apparently, one of Michael's colleagues had tipped them off, expecting a spectacle of his triumph. Instead, they got something else entirely. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved forward. "Mrs. Shannon, is it true your business is worth more than your ex-husband's firm? Did you hide your company on purpose during the marriage? What's next for you after such a surprising courtroom win?" Michael pushed past the crowd, jaw clenched, refusing to answer. He hated losing in private, losing in public was unbearable for him. For me, it was justice. I smiled, not arrogantly, but firmly. "What's next?" I repeated to one of the reporters. "Growth. My company is just getting started." Later that evening, I sat alone in my new apartment. It was modest compared to the mansion Michael had insisted we live in, but it was mine. My plants stood in the window, photos of my family on the shelf, books scattered across the coffee table. It finally felt like a home that reflected me, not an image I was forced to uphold. I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. Emails flooded in, congratulations from clients, new proposals, messages from women I didn't even know who had heard about the case. They thanked me for showing that ambition doesn't make you less of a wife, less of a woman. I leaned back and let their words wash over me. For years, Michael had convinced me my success was insignificant. But here it was, living proof that I was not just capable, I was powerful. The phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You embarrassed me today. Enjoy your little victory. It won't last. Michael." I laughed softly, almost pitying him. He still didn't get it. This wasn't about one day in court. This was about years of resilience, about proving to myself that I had never needed his approval to be worthy. I deleted the message without replying. Then I closed the laptop, raised my glass, and whispered to the empty room, "Here's to never being underestimated again." And for the first time in years, the silence felt like peace. Weeks after the divorce, I ran into Michael by chance at a charity gala. He was alone, no smirk, no crowd of admirers circling him like before. He looked smaller somehow, stripped of the confidence that once defined him. He approached me hesitantly, glass in hand. "Sarah," he said, voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "I didn't realize. I never thought you were capable of all that." I tilted my head, studying him the way one might study a stranger. "That's the problem, Michael. You never thought." For years, I had bent myself to fit into his world, to be the version of a wife he thought he wanted. But standing there, in my own tailored dress bought with money I earned, surrounded by colleagues who respected me, I felt the sharp contrast between who I had been and who I had become. He tried again. "Maybe we could talk sometime. I owe you an apology." I smiled politely, but my answer was final. "No, Michael. You owe yourself a lesson." I walked away, heels tapping against the marble, not once looking back. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had something to prove. I had already proven it, to him, to his family, to the world. But most importantly, to myself. Because the truth is, this was never about divorce court. It wasn't about destroying him, though that part came naturally. It was about reclaiming my worth, piece by piece, and finally standing tall in the life I had built. My husband mocked my career. My ex-husband now lives with the echo of that arrogance. And me? I live free, thriving, and untouchable.